And we are back. Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern day spiritual paradise. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, part-time vacationer. It feels good to be back, but most importantly, former elder, ministerial servant, and a kid raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 70s and 80s. As I do, a quick warning, we have some fun here. We heal, we cry. There's lots of sarcasm, jokes, some serious stuff at times. It is never meant to offend. Always meant to educate, entertain, and just create a sense of community for those of us that have walked away from God's organization. Sarcasm mine, there's an example. It feels good to be back. I hope you are all well, and I want to thank everyone for the great comments, notes, DMs, and more. A quick break was needed. If I missed you at all, please forgive me. I was in and out of cell service. I don't even know sometimes if some of my comments or thoughts or likes were actually landing. It was very, very spotty out in the redwoods. And gotta tell you, much needed break, good stuff, came back refreshed, and as always, I was inspired by something that I saw. As I travel, I inevitably run into reminders that God's people, Jehovah's Witnesses, are all around us here in the United States. As always, you see a few kingdom halls, although I have to say, they do seem to be far and few between these days, and maybe that's just me, maybe it's biased, but I used to see them everywhere, even in the smallest of towns, and that's just not the case anymore. I wonder why that could be. But my favorite moment during our road trip took place at the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, where hundreds of tourists were enjoying the iconic landmark, only to be abruptly interrupted by one of Jesus' well-placed book carts. And by well-placed, I mean smack in the middle of the main thoroughfare, requiring families and foreigners and tourists to give an awkward hello or start planning on how they were going to Photoshop it all out of their photos of the Golden Gate Bridge. It was unbelievable. It never ceases to shock me when I see one of those things. So I grabbed a coffee at a friend's coffee shop, which is located there on the south end of the bridge. I highly recommend that. And I just kind of stood there and took it all in for a few minutes. The book cart phenomenon came on after I left roughly 14 years ago. And when I see one, it still just makes me laugh. I'm going to cover this more down the road. But it's unbelievable. I sat there watching as throngs of people walked by information we are told will save our lives from a worldwide genocide hosted by the God of love himself, because we too were not manning a book cart somewhere spreading the same message to other people. As I sipped my coffee and resisted the urge to approach, thankfully, I was talked out of that. I let my mind drift to scenes of this iconic bridge on fire, taking fireballs from the sky in the background, a blood red sky, with everyone I could see enjoying this scene, including little kids running for cover. Would that make them stop and take a book? Would we all jump into the bay, crying out to Stephen Lett to have mercy on us? How fast could we swim to Alcatraz and hide from the destruction? All due to not believing Toni Morris was handpicked by Jesus Christ himself to speak for him. But for me, and I realize this speaks to my generation or experience, I continue to be amazed that Jehovah's Witnesses no longer have to be students of the Bible at all, or even their own doctrines. In my day, I was required to study, to read the Bible, and to know it in order to save lives and have educated conversations. But that dynamic appears to have completely disappeared among Jehovah's Witnesses. A pioneer or a publisher now just needs good posture and the ability to point at the cart. I witnessed one man ask a question and it looked like they couldn't answer it. I know that shocks everyone listening, but they did try to give him a book. It all worked out in the end. This book card thing is just mind blowing to me. And maybe it is my generation of past Jehovah's Witnesses. So, yes, the odd thoughts I had as I stared at two men and one woman standing next to a cart, sipping their coffees, something Jesus often drank coffee while he was saving lives, as you recall, and staring into their iPhones as people moved around them. And it's just, it's just such a scene now. But watching this scene triggered several memories for me. Thoughts, things that I've often dwelt on. Memories of me trying to figure out the whys on this organization. And I figured it was time to discuss a sensitive subject, one that seemed to pop into my mind as I witnessed this scene on vacation. And I really hope that you're ready. And well, how do I say this nicely? I'm just going to come out and say it. Are you ready? Jehovah needs your cash. That's right. The God that created our universe, that made the sun stand still, controls weather patterns, and managed to get his own son from the heavens into the womb of a Jewish virgin girl, struggles to stick to a budget. It's a thing with him. And look, if you're wondering why the Creator needs cash at all, you're not alone. I'm sure that many of us have contemplated the money-making dynamic and schemes, and I'm going to use that term, that exist among Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's especially appalling for those of us that have actually read the Bible in our time as a J-Dub. Consider Haggai chapter 2, verse 8, which I always found puzzling when it comes to how much Jehovah needs cash. It says, quote, "The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, declares Jehovah of armies." Okay, sounds like he owns it all. And then there's Psalms 24:1, which says, quote, "To Jehovah belong the earth and everything in it," end quote. Seems pretty straightforward. And for those of us that put on a thinking cap or were just a classic overthinker, it created some problems in our head. Jehovah owns it all. He owns everything. The silver, the gold, the paper money's printed on, you name it, Jehovah owns it all. So it creates questions. And it creates questions around money and assets. Why does Jehovah and his chosen guys always need my money? What does documented Jehovah's Witness history show all of us about Jesus and cash? Continuing to be blunt, 90% of Jehovah's Witnesses won't know anything about what I share and what follows, despite being a witness for decades and personally giving their own money and assets to this organization. It really shows how deep the cognitive dissonance runs in an everyday Jehovah's Witness. And I say that because how many people do you know that just hand over their money and assets without any knowledge of where it's going? How many people do you know? Can you walk up to a stranger and ask them to part with their wallet? It's not something that's common. If you ever wanted proof of the governing body's level of control, this subject might be it. They get millions of people to hand over their money and assets without questioning anything, without knowing where it's going. Many have asked me what the end game is for the governing body. And of course, we all have our theories. This guy does as well. The one question that pops up is, do they really believe this stuff they're teaching us? Or is there something else? I'm here to say that there just might be something else, and this likely might be it. They are a multi-billion-dollar publishing company. And when I say billion, that's with a capital B. Multi-billion. Dare I say it, they're a multi-billion-dollar multimedia company with printing facilities around the world, a television studio, sophisticated distribution, real estate holdings, and let me tell you, a whole lot more. But let's start with something that every Jehovah's Witness is very familiar with. And it starts for those of us that were raised in this organization from a very young age. It makes its debut in every Kingdom Hall. It starts with the term donations. Donations. For those of us that have been around a long time, we might even recognize the term contributions. The contribution box, the donation box. That's right, giving. Giving of your money and your assets. The guys in upstate New York are fantastic at making the common Jehovah's Witness feel like they're just like an Israelite or a first century Jew. They just cover us in the romance that we are directly connected with the original group of God's people. Just a short journey to the temple because Jehovah needs you in his specific building to love and care for you, subject for a whole nother day, where you could say thank you to him by bringing assets to give to him, the creator of all things, including the assets we just heard the Bible say he already owns. It's an odd dynamic if you let your brain go there. But the governing body romanticizes the entire act. It connects you to the Israelites going up to the temple. It connects you to the first century Jews giving to their brothers in another city. It uses words like first fruits and sacrifice. They roll out Jesus' words on a regular basis about giving. They create an emotional response to get you to part with your cash. And for those of us that grew up in this organization, it started young. It started with pocket change. You filter around the lint in your pocket, you found a couple coins, you put it in the donation box, you saw a parent beam with joy, and you felt really good about it. Really good about it. Incidentally, as I got older and had to collect those contribution boxes, wasn't a lot of fun collecting all those pennies. But it made me smile because those little people wanted to give their money to Jehovah. But one of my favorites, and I have to highlight it, it comes from Jesus himself in this matter of donation, contribution, giving of your assets. The governing body is sure to roll out Jesus' words about the widow who gave next to nothing but gets a call out in the Bible. The account comes to us from Mark chapter 12, verses 41 through 44, and it's a heartwarming, fuzzy one. It says this at Mark 12, quote, "And he sat down with the treasury chests in view and began observing how the crowd was dropping money into the treasury chests. And many rich people were dropping in many coins. Now a poor widow came and dropped in 2 small coins of very little value. So he called his disciples to him and said to them, 'Truly I say to you that this poor widow put in more than all the others who put money into the treasury chests. For they all put in out of their surplus, but she, out of her want, put in everything she had, all she had to live on.'" End quote. It's a heartwarming story. Look, I get it. I get it. Jesus is teaching people what it means to give from the heart because they want to. Desire, motive, some of my favorite stuff to explore, a subject unto itself. But in full disclosure, I always struggled with this story, particularly the way the governing body applies it to Jehovah's Witnesses emptying their wallets. I'm not here giving a negative take on giving or generosity or charity. Far from it. I believe in all of those things. But for this podcast host, like so many other things, I always wondered why. Why are they using this story to get Jehovah's Witnesses to get a warm and fuzzy feeling about giving up their money. We have a widowed woman struggling to survive, giving everything she had, according to Jesus, and no one got up and told her it wasn't necessary? Look, you're getting a peek into my mind going back to childhood as a J-Dub. Wait a minute, this poor little lady, she's got no one, she's alone. No one got up and said, "You're 2 coins, that's all you have to live on. It's okay." I mean, Jehovah owns the planet. You take that and buy some food, you poor lonely woman. Did it not cross anybody's mind? Do I need to go into the hardships of being a woman during that time in history, much less one without a husband, income, children to care for her? As a poor kid who was raised by a single mother, this particular account always made me give Jehovah a little side eye. That was problem one for me in this use of this story by the governing body. But problem two is this. I feel confident in saying Jesus wasn't rolling out this story or any of his stories to encourage asset and investment allocation in a future publishing empire. Look, I'm going to say it now. I'm going to stick my flag in the ground. That's not what this was about. Call me bold. The Jehovah's Witness donation arrangement is for the organization, not for that individual fallen upon hard times. And I will point out one very obvious fact about the use of this brief moment in time with Jesus. Nowhere in this account do we see Jesus asking her or anyone else for their money. Am I the only one noticing this? He tells a wonderful story, but nowhere does Jesus stand up and ask for her money. Nowhere do we see him standing up and encouraging everyone present to give of their material assets. Odd. Odd? Here was a chance for Jesus to really lay the groundwork for his publishing company in future centuries. But, well, on second glance, not a word. He doesn't mention it. No command to give money. Nothing about books and magazines. Not giving money for kingdom halls or television studios. Nothing. Zero from the king. In a moment when he was trying to teach the power of giving. And of course, it's grossly misapplied by the governing body. He simply makes an observation about this wonderful woman's heart, her love for his father, her desire to give. But here is something that has always interested me, since we're starting with the Bible and we'll move into the fun stuff. Equally telling in this story is that none of the apostles stood up and started asking for money either. Wait a minute. Aren't they the original governing body? Strange thoughts from this chair. The apostles don't ask for money, assets, her to give anything, or anyone else to give anything. And I believe we're told by today's governing body that those guys were the original governing body. Odd, is it not? But that doesn't stop their predecessors, the guys in upstate New York today in 2023, from using this brief observation on giving as an emotional tool to get Jehovah's Witnesses to give them their money. That includes money from very poor people in developing countries, and it also includes money from children. We've all seen the Caleb and Sophia videos guilting kids who just want an ice cream cone to instead give it to the guys on Jehovah's Witness broadcasting sporting pinky rings. That's right. This little story, Jesus, about a wonderful woman who just had a great spirit, is leveraged to get even a child to part with their pocket change. And while we laugh about it, let's get candid for a minute. It's serious, particularly for people in developing countries who, like this widow in the story, don't have food, running water, clothes, shelter, or anything else. they want to make sure Sam Hurd and Stephen Lett get a new ring for the other pinky. Jehovah's Witnesses are constantly hit with the reminder to give money. It's only increased in recent years, and there's some wonderful people with videos and other podcasts and whatnot that go into some of those details in terms of how much it's increased. We'll quote from some of those. But this is all ironic considering how they go out of their way to say they don't do this. While they're doing it, they look you in the eye as a Jehovah's Witness and tell you they're not doing it. The sky is blue. No, it's not. It's red. And it all started with Chuck Taze Russell in the late 1800s. The Watchtower of 1879, page 20, had this to say directly from the words of Chuck: "Do not, quote, do not suppose these remarks to be an appeal for money. No. Zion's Watchtower has, we believe, Jehovah for its backer. And while this is the case, it will never beg nor petition men for support. When he who says all the gold and silver of the mountains fails to provide necessary funds, we will understand it to be time to suspend the publication." End quote. He reiterates it again 20 years later in the Watchtower of August 1st, 1899, page 201, where it says, quote, "We have never considered it proper to solicit money for the Lord's cause, after the common custom. It is our judgment that money raised by the various begging devices in the name of our Lord is offensive, unacceptable to him, and does not bring his blessing either upon the givers or the work accomplished." End quote. Strong words from Charles. Strong words at the beginning of this organization. And isn't it ironic? We are told that the same guy who said these things, Charles Taze Russell, otherwise known as Chuck, is now in heaven helping Jesus direct the work. And am I the only one that finds it odd that both Jesus and Chuck now ask for money? They say things like this. In the 2022 video by Gaius Glockington, found online, the subject, "Make Friends by Means of Unrighteous Riches," it starts by him saying, quote, "The text reminds us of our financial means to make friends with Jehovah and Jesus." Let me read that again. The text reminds us of using our financial means to make friends with Jehovah and Jesus. And even though Jehovah owns everything, seeing us giving and making sacrifices makes him happy. End quote. Jehovah, the guy who owns everything, that we are told by Charles Taze Russell when he started the organization, found it unacceptable and offensive, has suddenly shifted gears, according to Gaius Glockington and the governing body. Now, if you want to be his friend, you need to be giving him your money. If you're thinking, wait a minute, part of my friendship with Jehovah includes me having access, having access to my bank account? If you're thinking that, you're not alone. Friendship with the Creator of all things, based at least partially on your money. If he owns everything, what is the point of me giving him something he already owns, and why does that make him happy? There's a few questions developing here for those of us who have brain synapses firing. Again, as a witness, you're encouraged to turn that brain off. It's a stunning, stunning example of how this all comes unhinged rapidly when it comes to Jehovah and his need for your cash. But how about another modern example of Jesus and his guys not asking for money? Now gone due to the speaker himself being apparently a bad guy in some way, you can find the 2022 morning worship video on Anthony Morris, Tony, where he, on the subject, discusses money. The subject is Jehovah loves a cheerful giver. Lovable Tony, as he's come to be known, claims they don't ever ask for money. He starts ripping into other religions for doing so. And then says, however, Jehovah needs your cash, and he will only love us if we grease his palms a little bit. This is what he had to say in the 2022 video. Quote, "We have never considered it proper to solicit money." But he then goes on to claim this does not mean, quote, "we cannot talk about money. We don't beg for money, but nevertheless, we have to talk about it, for God loves a cheerful giver." So there we have it. We are happy to give to Jehovah. We never come across like putting people kind of get them even begrudgingly give just so we can get their money. That is not this organization. Again, quoting Tony, back to the quote, "Of course, Christendom are experts at begging for money." One translation put it nicely, God loves people who love to give. And that's true. So we want Jehovah to love us. If you're not spotting the manipulation at this point, please take a minute, pause, and rewind. One translation put it nicely, says Tony, God loves people who love to give, and that's true. So we want Jehovah to love us. So this money we might have, whatever amounts, depending on our own personal circumstances, we're happy to give to kingdom interests. Jehovah doesn't approve of coming empty-handed. Money meets a response in all things, and we have to take that into account, even if we are in the poor range. End quote. Wow. Pause. Reflect. Let your brain fire. This man got on stage and said that if we want Jehovah to love us, we can't come empty-handed, even if you're poor. Money is necessary to gain Jehovah's love. Folks, let's just end this episode and go take a nap. It's incredible. Never mind that this guy, the guy collecting money for Jehovah, was spotted in a liquor store buying a cart full of very expensive liquor and scotch. His money? It's the one question I had. As discovered by other ex-Jehovah's Witness activists and researchers, he was just placed in a new home in North Carolina, undoubtedly on money collected from guess who? Other Jehovah's Witnesses, even if they're in the poor range. Not a bad way to get a retirement home when you yourself skip college or saving for the future, a future we are told will only include paradise and lettuce wraps any day now. He is sure to throw in that even poor Jehovah's Witnesses are told to cough up the cash. Can't you just picture Jesus strong-arming the widow in that scene in Mark, grabbing her by the arm and saying, "Look, I know you're poor. I know you're alone. Your husband is dead. But my dad, Jehovah, who already owns everything, he needs your 2 coins. So I'm going to personally lead you to the box. Empty your pockets, lady, poor or not." Can't you just picture it? And as I mentioned, the apostles oddly didn't do that either, and they were the first governing body. I digress. The governing body goes out of its way to bash other religions for doing this, while doing it at the same time. I just read you Tony. Taking advantage of the constant malaise a Jehovah's Witness lives under by claiming they don't pass a plate. But then they roll out comments like this one from the Watchtower of May 15th, 2010, page 31, quote, "A collection plate is never passed. Rather, there is a box in a fixed location for any who wish to make a contribution." End quote. Don't worry, folks. Don't worry. You can find a, quote, contribution box about every 10 feet at a district convention. There's an entire department around it. Sisters feel like it's a privilege to sit at one and stare at people as they dump their cash into the box. In case you missed the last box, there'll be another one. The last one you just passed, just keep going. There's another one directly in your line of sight on your way to that smelly bathroom in the convention center. For those of us that have been out of this organization for a long time, you may be interested in knowing that roughly 10 years ago or so, I cannot corroborate the exact date. I apologize for not having that available. This organization and the governing body, who came from Jesus and the apostles, as we're told, they started adding ATM machines to assembly halls. That's right. The creator of the universe instructed his son, the king, to start looking into better banking procedures, and he had ATMs and credit card machines added to assembly halls. The same guy who walked through the temple overturning tables meant for profit, vendors and merchants screaming, you're turning my father's house into a cave of robbers. That's a guy. The same guy now has ATMs and credit card machines available to Jehovah's Witnesses. No better way to separate you from your cash than to hit you with the standard post-baptism talk, pre-lunch announcement that the assembly, this group, this convention, that we were told we were required to attend is, well, running a little expensive, and they need cash to pay for you being at the meeting we told you had to be at. I think in other circles, they call this a scam, folks. Never mind the dishonesty of these announcements, as they add up publishers in each congregation attending, tack a dollar amount to each head, and if they haven't collected that total amount, they're then short of what is needed because of a fabricated dollar amount they created for this particular two-day assembly to pay for utilities on a building they already own tax-free. Did you catch the scam? That's right. If you're a PMO listening or someone who's always been curious how this works, they often own the building outright and have for decades, so there's no mortgage, and they're sending that money that they claim they need for that two-day circuit assembly back to New York. And the whole dollar amount is fabricated. They add up the publishers by congregation. Let's say we got 1,100 people attending. They're all worth $5. If we don't hit what the math says we need to hit, we need to tell them we're short. That's it, folks. That's what Jesus has his guys doing now at your local district, circuit, and congregation level. Single parents, poor people, publishers who packed a peanut butter sandwich and scraped together gas money, then scramble to a convenient ATM in the lobby and cough up their cash, just like Jesus wants, right? That was certainly the spirit of the widow who gave the 2 coins. And how considerate of Jesus and his guys to have an easy-to-use ATM handy so Jehovah would be our friend and love us. If this doesn't disgust you, there are things that should disgust you more surrounding children. True, shunning, other things. But if this doesn't shine a light on what a Jehovah's Witness is part of, there just isn't much else that can. If you're wondering why Jesus didn't mention the ATMs he would have placed for his people during the all-critical last days, just also consider he never even mentioned an organization or overlapping generations. So the ATMs and his need for money, your money, is a relatively small matter, right? An indoctrinated Jehovah's Witness can say whatever they want. The money grab, including multiple videos you can find on the website, multiple convention parts, and even, as I mentioned, videos targeting children's money, have all greatly increased in recent years. Since 2016, the begging for donations has increased to well over 20 to 30 mentions by year, and that doesn't even include videos. That's just the print mentions, the books, the literature. They're openly increasing any and all mentions for donations. It isn't a coincidence that this is all happening as they get hammered with lawsuits regarding the abuse of children, our precious little people, and they are having to pay out. It's not a coincidence that this is all happening as well as there is ongoing construction in upstate New York as they create a visitor center, a museum, and more. No word yet on how much money they saved by cutting off Toni Morris's trips to the liquor store, but I'm guessing it was significant. But look, the contribution boxes we kids love to dump our quarters into are small potatoes now. That's little stuff. Jehovah has made sure to include much more lucrative ways to give him your cash and assets. Jehovah, the God that made the sun stand still and keeps the earth rotating on its axis, also now accepts jewelry, personal property, insurance policies, bank accounts, stocks and bonds, real estate, we'll get into that, gift annuities, wills and trusts. That's right, you can give all of those to Jehovah now. He needs them. We'll get into this in a few minutes, but people, let that sink in. The God of the Bible and his Son, that we are told are the personification of love, and to get that love, you've got to give him your assets and cash. It's not only an insult to the intelligence of a grown human being, it's also pretty insulting to the character of God and his Son. Would you agree? Gone is a little widow dropping in a couple of coins. Enter now legal documents, lawsuits, and grandma's jewelry box. Jehovah and Jesus love that stuff. They've even included a video on the website with how to give this stuff to Jehovah. You can even give him your assets electronically. That's right. I'm waiting for the Jehovah and Jesus app. It's coming. They have an enormous e-commerce presence now, a secure link on the site where you can contact them about Aunt Millie's estates or even choose your congregation by name to send cash to. For those wanting to send Jehovah money, you can see that, and if you're at least, or in the least, I should say, curious about this, you can find it at donate.jw.org. It's right there. Jesus, at a time when every soul is in the balance prior to the most vicious and disturbing genocide in all of human history, he set up an e-com site so you could get him your cash. My favorite part of this "we make it easy to send Jehovah money" scheme is that it allows you to set up reoccurring payments. I'm going to pause there. Reoccurring payments. That's right. You can set it up to where money is just coming out of your bank account and direct depositing to Jehovah. And this holds a lot of weight with me and is one of the most disturbing details of this entire scam. They said this in the Watchtower of August 15th, 1971, page 506, quote, "The emphasis in all giving among the witnesses is that it must be voluntary and spontaneous from the heart," end quote. I mean, let's get into it. Nothing says spontaneous giving like setting up a weekly direct withdrawal from your bank account. I don't want to have to remember this. I'm just going to send Jehovah cash weekly in a reoccurring payment. I really feel bad for the poor widow who had to go all the way down to the temple to dump her 2 coins. Jesus is now allowing people to spontaneously give right from their bank. He just needs your routing information. I give any Jehovah's Witness listening to this a lot of credit. Please stay. You're brave. But listen to this. From the Watchtower of November 15th, 2013, pages 8 and 9, in a full-color 2-page spread on how to send any and all assets to New York. I want to issue a warning. If they find out you set aside your grandmother's wedding ring as a family heirloom to keep in the family, there's likely going to be a local needs part. Or I can point you to the story of Achan. The ending is a real killer. A 2-page insert on how Jehovah needs your cash, your investments. And for a witness, someone who's dyed in the wool spiritual, and we all come in different sizes and shapes emotionally and mentally on this, they're told that this money giving, this cash flow, this asset allocation is all part of their relationship with Jehovah. That they're honoring Jehovah with their valuable things. But if I need to explain how manipulative this lie is, I'm not sure what more I could do. Here is a fact for anyone and all people listening. Are you ready? Jehovah doesn't need money. He doesn't. He already owns everything. His words, not mine. As for Jesus, based on what I've read about him, he would be just as okay about handing out a hug to a person in need than whipping out your debit card. So it's clear, crystal clear, that this is money going to a man-made corporation in upstate New York. All of it. Every penny. Jesus and Jehovah don't have a bank account. They're not saving for retirement. Your money and anything you give this organization is going to other men. It's to the point, as any J-Dub or ex-J-Dub can tell you, that you can't even, quote, spontaneously give or donate to a disaster relief fund. Not to an individual person or to a congregation in need. No, you're instructed to just take that same cash and send it to them. In New York, they'll make the decision how they use your cash you, quote, spontaneously gave to someone in need. I could spend another hour on the absurdity of donations, the contribution box, as well as lots of personal experiences. But I'm going to shift gears for a few minutes into big money. Big money. What follows would make a fascinating reality show on some off-the-wall streaming service. I would love to be able to do it. But it's incredibly important that Jehovah's Witnesses or anyone considering Jehovah's Witnesses understand what they're part of. And I guarantee that any newcomer doesn't know this. And the most heartbreaking part is there are people that have been witnesses for decades that have given their lives that don't know this. They don't know any of it, what I'm about to share. I'm going to pick one in the interest of time. Let's discuss real estate. I bet you didn't know that Jesus himself was a real estate magnate. Does that come as a shock? Wait, you didn't know? How can that be? Let's reference the book he left behind to give us all the insights into his money, Freudian slip, his many loving talents, his many skills, his personality. At Matthew chapter 8, verses 19 through and 20, it says this, quote, "And a scribe came up and said to him, 'Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go.' But Jesus said to him, 'Foxes have dens, and birds of heaven have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay down his head.'" End quote. The book they tell us to read, that they say is a glimpse. It is frozen Holy Spirit, the breath of God, that Jesus has himself made sure is protected for our benefit in 2023. In that book, Jesus must have been mistaken when speaking about himself. He's got to be mistaken, right? That has to be a misprint. The Holy Spirit took a few minutes off. The king, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, is a real estate magnate and has been a real estate magnate since the early 1900s. And I'm not talking small potatoes real estate either. Despite his promise to run lead on the largest genocide to ever see the planet Earth, including fire, floods, earthquakes, and more, he is also a dynamic investor on the same landmass he plans to destroy. It makes perfect sense, doesn't it? Jesus, the real estate magnate, who's going to come and wipe out the planet Earth, all by natural disasters. He gave us previews going back to Noah. He's investing in that same land. The property portfolio of the Organization of Jehovah's Witnesses is worth billions of dollars. Billions. Mostly purchased with money pulled from those same contribution boxes. And let's not forget that Jesus guys had everything they've ever built constructed on the backs of free labor. On top of everything else, the insult continues. They have a multi-billion-dollar real estate empire built on the backs of free labor from other Jehovah's Witnesses. If you don't throw up, you have to marvel. You have to literally marvel at the genius. Leveraging the emotions of millions of innocent people to pump out publications, that's going to be another show, and to pump out properties for free and without tax implications. Hey, King David and King Solomon, hold my beer. And look, they're absolutely proud of this real estate empire. In the Watchtower, the simplified version, July 15th, 2015, page 24, we get this, quote, Jehovah's people around the world work hard to build kingdom halls. Unpaid volunteers design, build, and renovate them. As a result, during the last 15 years, we have built more than 28,000 beautiful kingdom halls worldwide, or about 5 kingdom halls every day. End quote. You've got billions in real estate assets. You're doing it all on the backs of other people, free labor, and you don't pay taxes. Ah, yes. Unpaid labor to amass a real estate empire, and you must do this if you want Jehovah's love. And you're doing this on a planet you're about to destroy any second now. It makes perfect sense. But how about some numbers to put it all in perspective? And at this point, I want to give a big shout out to the illustrious student, Paul Grundy at JW Facts, who's compiled much of this information. It's incredible. You'll find that in these numbers, your stomach will hurt. And some of them are even dated. It goes on to tell us that 64,501 kingdom halls catered to the 115,416 congregations in 2014. There were 87 branch offices then, per the 2018 Yearbook of Jehovah's Witnesses, a book that's long gone. While some Bethel branches are located in small inner city buildings, they regularly encompass large areas of property, land worth millions of dollars. If you want an example, look at the upstate New York compound. It looks like a resort on a lake in the middle of the woods. Over $2.7 billion worth of Watchtower property has been found listed for sale at online real estate websites between 2004 and 2020. Watchtower Property Sales Tracking itemizes each of these properties with links to their online advertisements. If you're interested in seeing that, again, the amazing Paul Grundy at JW Facts. Around $2 billion of this was for Watchtower's Brooklyn headquarters, with another $500 million relating to kingdom halls, assembly halls, and branch offices. This is the value of only around 500 properties, folks, that have been found advertised online for sale during a little tiny 15-year period. It's not the value of Watchtower's 64,000 other properties. Kingdom halls are being sold in Britain, Australia, and the United States for around $1 million each, depending on the properties, and $100,000 in countries with lower property prices, such as Poland, as an example. A rough estimate of the total value of kingdom halls based on the assumptions in the table compiled there by Paul is over 15 billion US dollars. Billion with a B. And did I mention that none of those crazy, insane, hard to grasp numbers even include the upstate New York facilities? It doesn't include the world headquarters in Warwick. It doesn't include the Watchtower Farms in Wallkill. It doesn't include the Educational Center in Patterson. Jesus, the King, overseeing all this, is a real estate magnate. Even though the Bible says he didn't even have a place to sleep. But for many of us that grew up Jehovah's Witnesses in the 70s and 80s, we still associate everything with all those properties in Brooklyn, which were located on what was incredible prime waterfront real estate in Brooklyn, New York. If you ever had a chance to visit Brooklyn, Bethel, I did several times on my way out of the organization, story for another day. It was incredible real estate with a gorgeous view of Manhattan, the river, and whatnot. And folks, it's all a matter of public record now. And Jehovah's Witnesses received over $2 billion US dollars when selling those 32 Brooklyn properties between the years 2004 and 2018. And folks, that's just the United States. Jesus and Jehovah have a lot of vested interest in real estate on a planet they promised to destroy. And I'll give you an example on something that's non-U.S. related. And if you approach any Jehovah's Witnesses and ask them about this particular subject, you're going to get a blank stare. I guarantee, I'll say 100% won't know about this. 100%. If you get a few minutes after this little show, go check out the following website, ibsaproperty.com. If you're not familiar with this, it's so clever. It stands for International Bible Students Association, property.com, ibsaproperty.com. Prepare for a gut punch. If you ask a witness about this website, they're not going to have a clue what you're talking about. But you, dear listener, please go check it out, where you will find Jesus' guys are busy in these last days, not saving the lives of every precious soul who have not heard of their future paradise earth, no, but selling other properties in places like London, England. Jesus himself had nowhere to lay his head, but now has plenty of places to stay all over the planet. If you're like me, you're bracing yourself for the jw.org Airbnb program because I have no doubt it's coming along with the app where you can just send money via phone. This is the organization we are told is built by the God of love, who just cares about people. While time doesn't allow me to go into great detail, I can tell you that the governing body is very interested in amassing wealth through real estate. I can't reveal too much about this next story due to legal issues and a request not to by the person, but at one time I was close to a former elder, roughly 10, 11 years ago, who was in the real estate industry. He, unbeknownst to him, he had left. He was actually disfellowshipped. We were friends as witnesses and post-witnesses. But he attended a meeting in California where he was approached by two men, and they told him they represent the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society. He's a disfellowshipped elder. He buttoned his lip and said, "Nice to meet you." But why did they approach him at this convention? They were seeking time with him to discuss high-risk, high-reward real estate properties for investment. That's right. Two guys from Bethel, assigned by the governing body, were attending real estate conventions, looking for high-risk, high-reward investments. He was in shock. He was disfellowshipped and out, but his jaw hit the floor. Here he had been a well-known elder in our area. He had no idea this went on, but these brothers were looking to put money in high-reward property transactions. And look, I'm sure Jesus would have done the same thing had he not been busy resurrecting and healing people in the Bible. He would have been seeking some real estate, properties. Own a piece of the rock he's going to destroy. Oh, man. Jehovah's Witness leadership buys properties. They build kingdom halls, and they flip them for profit. I'm not going to go too much into depth here, but many people know this. For those that don't, sit back. They buy property, they build a building, and they flip it for profit, and they do it all on the backs of free labor, and they don't have to pay taxes. Those are facts. Facts. Then they build another kingdom hall, and they do it all over again. If that fact isn't enough for you, consider the fact that they're building a visitor center complete with Bible props, think Disneyland theme park, for a world that is passing away, and so is its desire. They're heavily engaged in real estate transactions, buying up property and investment. It's insane. And I think the part that's always left me just empty is that I didn't know any of this, and I was an elder being used on district and circuit assemblies. Most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know this. But if you're still looking for motive in all of this, consider this fact highlighted in a Cranes magazine article from 2016. You can find it online. It says, quote, "The organization does not have to pay tax on profit made from selling real estate or annual property tax, and it constructs new buildings with donations and volunteer labor." It goes on to say, and again, you can find this online, it estimates that due to the Watchtower's religious-related tax status, Jehovah's Witnesses have very likely saved $368 million in real estate taxes over just the past 12 years and on only those Brooklyn properties alone. Sit back and take it in. And I'm done with the numbers now, because it's not what interests me. But it gives you the scale of what apparently we are told Jehovah and Jesus are very interested in, and that we must be giving into if we want their love and friendship. Read it from their literature, quoted their governing body. I can't say it enough. When it comes to this subject, you'll find that most Jehovah's Witnesses know nothing about any of this. I'm open about having less interest in the secular and analytical side of Jehovah's Witnesses. I know it's there. I use it. I just shared some of the hard work of other people. My interest lies in the spiritual, the motive, the nuanced side of worshiping Jehovah. When I was leaving, I looked long and hard for motive. I knew I was part of something that was bordering on evil, particularly as it pertained to children and shunning. And I stand by that, by the way. Evil. But why? I couldn't wrap my head around the why. Aside from the corruption of power and the ego on these guys, there had to be something more that kept this con job going for well over a century. And look, this is where I landed. When I was set to leave, and I'll share my journey at some point if it interests anybody, I traveled the country. I was on airplanes going everywhere. I visited grave sites. I was in Brooklyn, Bethel. I was at the United Nations. I examined legal documents going back to Chuck Russell. They're all public records. And the conclusion I came to was simple. I'm open about having less interest in the secular and analytical side of Jehovah's Witnesses. So for the people whose minds work more like mine, I want to share a few of my own thoughts on this subject versus the king I read about in the Bible and the real estate magnate that runs an earth-wide organization today. So as the show often does, welcome to Random Thoughts from Stacy's dark chambers and corners of his mind. Here we go. Am I the only one, excuse me, am I the only one wondering how a guy pointing out a little widowed woman dropping a couple of coins is the same guy that we are told is doing this? It seems simplistic, but I think it's got some power. The Jesus of the Bible, who was impressed by a little, tiny, unnoticed scene from a wonderful little woman, has turned into this? Dare I say, I won't say it. He has apparently done a complete flip-flop in personality, am I right? I grew up being told that Satan the devil, you remember him, the bad guy, he's still around, by the way, he lives here now, that Satan was in charge of big business and all things commercial. From the Watchtower Study edition, August 2015, under Watch Your Association in These Last Days, we get this, quote, the religious, political, and commercial elements, certainly real estate falls under that umbrella, commercial elements of this world, including their information channels, are under the influence of the God of this system of things, Satan the devil. End quote. From the Watchtower, July 2017, page 10, quote, Satan would like nothing better than to have us spend all our time and energy as slaves to his commercial world. End quote. On my journey out, and when considering this subject, I found myself looking for one of those corner benches plastered with a real estate ad featuring Jesus and Satan and their mugs together alone with a phone number. Look us up for your next real estate needs. I couldn't find one. How is it that the very guy looking to destroy Satan is also apparently working with him to amass a real estate empire? He says not to get too involved with the commercial system run by his arch enemy, the devil, but then gets involved with his arch enemy, the devil himself? Let the brain fire. Am I the only one who had this thought? Jehovah's Witnesses are told that Satan is the god of this system of things, according to 2 Corinthians 4:4. So, how do I ask this? Is Jehovah doing business with Satan? What? Satan controls everything. Your words, not mine. But Jehovah, Jesus, and his guys in New York are doing business with him. On a piece of property they tell us they're going to destroy anyway. You don't even need all the numbers. You don't need all of the statistics and analytics. I lean into this. And look, I realize it's a reach, but Jesus made a few comments regarding property in his time. Did you know this? I mean, when his apostles asked a few too many questions at Matthew 24, he simply said, not a stone will be left standing. And that was just about Jerusalem, one city, one property that thousands of Jews had already given their lives for. But, well, now? He said not to be worried about it. That stuff's going to be wiped out. We're not in the building business. That escalated quickly, huh? Because 2,000 years later, Jesus has a whole new mindset, apparently. He really likes to buy himself some real estate and property. But it doesn't stop there. When a guy asked Jesus what he could do to be his follower, Jesus says this. Matthew 19:21, New World Translation, quote, Jesus said to him, if you want to be perfect, go sell your belongings and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven, and come be my follower, end quote. So wait a minute, dump everything and give it to poor people? No mention of his one-time real estate seminar at the local Holiday Inn? This doesn't sound like a guy who is currently sitting on billions of dollars of real estate and taking donations, including cash, stocks, and properties, including jewelry, from poor people. Tony told us, even if you're poor, give us your cash. Jesus says, dump everything and give it. There's a lot of confusion here, is there not? But if you're questioning why an organization that has billions of dollars does absolutely nothing practical to help people in need, let them answer that part for themselves. The Watchtower of May 2021, page 7 says this, quote, people may also feel that we should build schools and hospitals as well as perform other charitable works. They are stumbled because we focus our effort on the preaching work, not on solving the world's immediate problems. Never should we become distracted by the political and social issues of this world. End quote. First, see a past episode on the Good Samaritan, one of my favorites, because they apparently completely missed the point from their king. Or could it be that they just don't care what the point is? Maybe this is why Jesus said the above about selling everything and giving to the poor. He knew his 21st century guys would be a little dense. One thing is for sure, none of that money is given to the poor or to any kind of humanitarian effort. In fact, they take those same funds from the very poor people that desperately need them. And how about a few more words from Jesus on all things money, cash, real estate, on the above? Matthew 6:24, New World Translation, quote, from Jesus himself, no one can slave for two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will stick to the one and despise the other. You cannot slave for God and for riches, end quote. We are to believe this is the same guy with multiple websites selling properties worth billions. Does Jehovah know? Incidentally, for those that may not know, Stephen Lett, he of the governing body, invests in real estate himself. Go find that online. Seems smart for a guy that will help in destroying the earth and won't even live on the earth when it's all said and done. He's still investing on the earth. What exactly is Stephen Lett going to do? Point at his property from heaven and show his fellow kings, hey, that's my place right there. He can't because he would have destroyed it already. He's investing in something he's about to blow up. Okay, listen. One more of my random thoughts for good measure. And maybe this is just the way my mind works, full disclosure. But in Matthew 6:25 and 26, New World Translation, we get this, quote, on this account I say to you, stop being anxious about your lives as to what you will eat or what you will drink, or about your bodies as to what you will wear. Does not life mean more than food, and the body than clothing? Observe intently the birds of the heaven. They do not sow seed or reap or gather into storehouses, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not worth more than they are? End quote. So, from the dark corner of my head, let me get this straight. The God, the Creator, who tells me to be anxious for nothing, not my home, not my clothes, not my food, not my properties, not my bank account, not my routing information of my check account. Do not be anxious over anything, is himself anxious about cash flow coming into his publishing company? Am I alone here? How is it that we are told to not be anxious about anything, but, well, Jehovah is apparently very anxious about his dwindling bank account? Just tune in to JW Broadcasting or attend a convention, where you will see a Jehovah's Witness receiving many reminders to donate their cash or jewelry to the God who tells me not to be anxious, who apparently is himself anxious. It's a fascinating study in what this organization has done to good people. The cognitive dissonance, people drowning without ever putting any thought into any of this. And it's all in their hands. It's in the book they claim they read. It's all right there. Jehovah's Witnesses operate in a world that includes Jehovah's original purpose for mankind. I always found it odd that money and assets were never mentioned in the Garden of Eden and were apparently never part of the original purpose at all. In fact, forget money. They weren't even supposed to own clothes. But of course, Adam went sideways, and somewhere along the way, money, assets, donations, and more entered into the life of anyone who wanted Jehovah's love. And according to the Magic Book, the first mention of money is found at Genesis 17:12 through 14. And well, Jehovah's view of money starts strong. It starts with buying slaves and circumcising them. Wow. And I guess I always found it interesting that instead of wiping out some imperfect currency system, Jehovah not only let it go, but he also got in on the action. He too, and all the guys he has ever used since then, also love themselves some money. It's really an odd flex, considering he also said this at Proverbs chapter 11 and verse 4. Quote, "Wealth will be of no benefit on the day of fury, but righteousness is what will rescue from death." Quote. Nonetheless, dear Jehovah's Witnesses, Jehovah needs your cash. You can find an ATM in his assembly halls. You can find an e-com site where you can donate. You can dump it in a box. The creator of all things and his son and his organization are anxious, and they need your cash. Oddly, none of that jives with the book he claims he gave you. Give it some thought. I want to thank everybody for listening. I missed you guys virtually. Please let me hear your thoughts. Wherever you may be, hold on to that wallet and be well.